In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
We are back online and ready to record. Hi, Taylor. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. I'm excited that we are ending the colder part of the season where temperatures in Texas will hopefully take a break from being in the 20s.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm looking at my my weather app. I know I also got like a an air app to look at like the quality of the air quality. 'Cause like we're doing fine out here, but man, the air quality in LA is really insane. Like I'm very it's the people who are in those like deep smoke areas. I'm worried about their future, you know?
Yeah, it can't be good.
No, it can't be good. And my friend Margot said something this weekend that I like did not even think about. I was like, I think maybe I said this last week. I was like, the devastation of the fires in LA is so complete that it like overwhelms me. I don't really understand how like an entire house, like the refrigerator's gone, like the beds are gone. Like what? And she goes, they're in the air. And I was like, oh my God, you're totally right. Like everything like that is like these buildings were made of, it's in the air now, you know?
That is a little freaky.
Isn't it? But I was like, you're totally right. And like that's why like after 9/11, like more people have died from cancer after 9/11 than 9/11 itself
Yeah,
because like it was in the air 1,000 Xerox machines, you know,
yeah.
like 1,000 break rooms, all these things that you just like, I don't know, like it's hard if you, it's a lot. But I was like, yeah, that's really scary.
Wild. I never thought about that.
Anyway, yeah, me either. So that was wild. Anyway, hi. We're doomed to fail. We're never going to talk about 9/11 because I was there and I don't want to. But we're the podcast that brings you history's most notorious disasters, epic failures twice a week, every week. And I'm Taylor with Vars.
Welcome to our podcast. You know, last time I welcomed Taylor to her own podcast, and this week I'm going to
Hmm.
welcome you all to our podcast.
Oh, that's nice of you. Um, okay, I do also have a fun one that I'm excited because I know you know a lot about it, so I want to talk to you.
Sweet.
Um, okay. So I was worried that you were going to do this. Um, when you did your open water episode, what are their names again? Tom and Eileen
Man.
Lonergan.
Yeah, there you go. Lonergan. That's what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Lonergan. So I was thinking that like you were gonna do this, but then you didn't do it last week, so I just let it go because I was reading a book. But when you were thinking about your story about being lost in those seas and potentially being eaten by sharks, is there a historical situation that reminded you of?
USS Indianapolis.
Yes, it's the USS Indianapolis.
Good guess, Fars.
I knew that you would know. And so I read a book about it called Indianapolis, the true story of the worst sea disaster in U.S. naval history and the 50-year fight to exonerate an innocent man. Super long title. But I read that. I listened to the last podcast one again because they covered it as well. I have some YouTube videos I'll share. And then I also have a article I'll reference later. But I read a book and it was really good, super interesting. And I feel like you know the basics, right?
Oh yeah.
So I'm excited. We'll talk
I
about
even
some of
know
the
who was wrongly
yes.
accused or
We'll
whatever.
talk about some of the gory deets. Okay, set the scene. It's World War II, but it's not day one. It's actually near the end. So Japan surrenders on September 2nd, 1945. The bombing of, but before that, so 1945 is a big year. The bombing of Tokyo is March 9th through 10th, 1945. And I think we should talk about that sometime because that was like, they killed more people than the atomic bombs, like the firebombing of Tokyo
Yeah, I
during those
always
days.
wondered that because I was like, why do we need an atomic weapon? But it was like just the boom. We just wanted the bigger
Yeah.
boom.
I mean, we could talk about that forever. Yeah, totally. Um, Hitler had died in April. It is the summer, and you know they're that we want the war to end. You know, like they want it to be over. They're like we want to avoid a mainland raid on Japan. Japan has no like they're not going to surrender, and like they talk about this a little bit in the book, and Dan Carlin has such a great, obviously, like multi-part season about Japan post World War II and during World War II. Have you ever listened to that?
I probably have the only thing is like his shows are so long.
I know you have to listen to them like 17 times,
Yeah,
and then you're like,
you gotta keep
okay,
listening to them because otherwise, like, it's just like, what was I thinking? You start doing
yeah,
your grocery list like 3 hours
no,
in, and then
totally.
you miss 2 hours of
You're like
content.
asleep. But he said he's quoting someone else, but he says the Japanese are like everyone else, only more so.
Yes, I remember
Do you remember
this.
that?
Yep.
So like the people in Japan are like, our emperor is from God, like no one would surrender, all those things. And Dan Carlin's is about like that one dude who lived in the jungle for like 30 years
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he like thought that Japan was still fighting. So but the United States is like, we have to figure out a way to end this war. So they decide to, as you just said, use an atomic weapon. So the Manhattan Project is secret. It's been happening. Um, but the parts of an atomic bomb are very, like, hard to get. Obviously, good.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be able to make one like in your house. So this they need uranium. So like half the uranium that like the world had ever known they had to use on these bombs, and they needed to get it from the United States to Japan for Little Boy, the bomb that fell was dropped on Hiroshima. And they needed a boat to do this, and that boat was the USS Indianapolis.
Yep.
That's why they were out there in the first place, was to bring that stuff. So a little bit about the USS Indianapolis itself. It looks like, I mean, it looks exactly like one of the ships in Battleship, you know?
Yeah.
It's like a little low when it has its like things. Please, at all of our Navy people, please don't be mad at me. But it is a Portland class heavy cruiser. It was commissioned in 1932. It's like a low and fast ship. It's definitely armed a ton. It can shoot missiles, it can shoot guns, it can like do all sorts of things. It was a flagship ship for several fleets, so a lot of fleets used it. It was in obviously it was made in 1932. We're in 1945. It's still going. It definitely the time between 1932 and 1945 is obviously huge, and a lot of stuff happened, and a lot of stuff that happened during World War II itself was learning how to build better ships obviously, like you're going to get
Yeah.
really good at that as it's happening. So the ships that were maybe similar in like size and function in 1945 were built a little bit sturdier than the Indianapolis, but they were still using it, you know?
Yeah.
So it shot down a ton of planes during the war. It would go back and forth from like California to Guam to Hawaii to like other islands, like helping out in those different like Pacific Fleet naval battles. It was there, and I don't know the details of these two either. And I feel like there's obviously like an infinite number of things we could cover, but they were there for Iwo Jima and the Battle of Okinawa, and I don't know exactly what those details are, but it was in both of those battles as well.
It's probably
While it was,
support off the
yeah.
coast.
Totally. Yeah, yeah. I feel like I know what Indianapolis was doing, but I'm not sure what those battles like, were exactly about.
Yeah.
Like Iwo Jima has
So
like the flag. I think the
Iwo
flag in Iwo
Jima,
Jima came off of Indianapolis, actually.
maybe. So Iwo Jima was they had to secure Iwo Jima before they could deliver the nuclear bomb over Hiroshima because it was the only part of making that approach that was possible for them to get shot down. So they had to take the island.
Makes sense. Well, thank you. There you go. During the Battle of Okinawa, the Indianapolis was struck by a kamikaze. So I want to talk about what a kamikaze pilot is, and then another thing that I learned about that I hadn't realized was a thing. So obviously, a kamikaze pilot is a pilot who has no intention of going back. You know, they
Right.
are going to lose their life in their mission. That's what they want. They know they're going to do that. They will like write letters to their family and be like, "I'm going off to do this for Japan." Blah blah blah. It's super intense, obviously, because like you're with a group of people who are definitely going to die, not just like maybe, not probably, but like definitely. The paper that they had to sign up to be a kamikaze pilot, it was like, "How much do you want to do this?" And it was like, "Are you eager or are you very eager?" There's like the only two options.
Yeah.
You can be like, "No, I'm not interested." Um, and so also this is dumb, but I didn't I assumed that the plane was the bomb, but they have bombs. you know? Like
I
the,
would have assumed the plane was a bomb too. I did not know that.
yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought. So I thought they would just like, point at the ship and he would go in there. But really what at least this example of the guy the kamikaze pilot who struck the Indianapolis, they went like as close as they could, which is like you're not coming back from that. Like you're gonna be like all torn up. You can't fly away. And then they drop their bomb on the deck, and then that plane like flipped into the ocean, and that's where the pilot died.
All right, Taylor, let's play some hypotheticals here, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, America has been taken over by the Russians,
Hmm.
and the only holdout is like Southern California,
Hmm.
and
Ooh, nice.
they have 20 planes, and they need 20 female only pilots. And if you don't do it, it is a sure thing that the Russians are going to take Joshua Tree. Do you do it?
Do I do it? Uh, I kind of feel like no, because because like, what am I gonna do? We're gonna do it again, same thing tomorrow.
So here's the thing. I
I feel like I
wouldn't
give
do
up.
it because I don't have kids. So I don't care. So
But you care about yours, I would, well, that would be my same reason for not doing it. Wait, because I do have kids. I would say I'm not doing it because I have kids. Have someone without kids do it.
call farce. It's like me while I'm being tortured in a cell.
I
Um,
know. You wouldn't make it very long in Texas.
no, no,
It'd be
no, no.
over for you.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I don't know. I feel like no. Like I don't feel like I'm the person who's gonna be like the guy in Independence Day who flies a plane into the middle of the thing hoping that will work.
You don't think you're Randy Quaid? No,
No,
Dennis. Is it Dennis or Randy?
it's Randy.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Poor Randy Quaid. Yeah, so anyway, um, that's what a kamikaze pilot is. There's also a Kai-10 pilot. Have you heard of these?
Yes.
So do you want to tell me what it is, or want me to just tell you?
It's the same thing except a submarine.
Yeah, it's a
It's the same
torpedo.
thing except it's actually scarier.
It's way scarier. So it's a piloted torpedo essentially. And I looked at pictures of it and like it looks like a really long black bomb torpedo thing and I was like I couldn't even figure out where you would sit. I was like I don't understand what this is, but you sit in the middle of it and all you have is a periscope and you're looking up the periscope and you're guiding the missile to hit the boat and that's it. You
Okay,
are the bomb.
second question.
Hmm.
If you were gonna do it, what would you do on your last day before your mission?
I would I think I'd eat a lot of good food would be like a big one, you know? I don't feel like you need to talk to everybody. I would just like talk to my close people and like try to be calm.
That's fair.
What would you do?
Korean barbecue. I'll do Korean
Eh,
barbecue because I would just stuff myself silly.
yeah, definitely the
And
food.
you like, I would do it to the extent where like I'm like, now dying is probably the better outcome than to feel this
Hmm.
full for much longer.
That's good. Gives you a reason to go on
Yeah, 100%.
to that last step
Yeah,
on
yeah,
this mortal plane.
yeah,
Um,
100%.
yeah. So anyway, that stuff's wild. So when the Indianapolis was attacked on Okinawa, it was hit by a kamikaze pilot. The bomb that the plane dropped before it rolled into the ocean. It went through the mess hall and then through a couple layers of the ship and then into the ocean. So it went straight all the way through, and it killed 9 people. So it didn't like permanently damage it, but it did have to go back to America to get repaired after that.
Yep.
So it's 1945. The Indianapolis is fixed, and they need someone to move that uranium. It takes 10 days to get it from San Francisco to Tinian Island, which is near Guam. And it was very, very secret. Like even the captain of the Indianapolis didn't know what was on it. They had just like a secret box, and they had 2 guys who were like Air Force men, I think, but they like really weren't. They were Los Alamos scientists. They were just there to bring it over. They did it. They left San Francisco the same day as the Trinity test. So the same day that the very first explosion happened, they were already on their way to do it, to bring it to Japan.
Yep.
Um, they obviously had fun trying to guess what was in it, you know? Like I don't know, maybe it's Rita Hayworth, like funny things, but it was uranium. So
Less
after all that,
less funny.
after all that. So they did get to where they wanted to go. The military scientists got off, some of the crew changed, and then they were headed back to Guam. So they were doing that, and then they went to Guam, picked some more people up, and then they were headed to the Philippines for like the next step. So they didn't know, like the by the time the Indianapolis is sort of out on its own on its way to the Philippines, they're waiting for their next orders. They don't know about the nuclear bomb. They don't know it's coming. They don't know that they did the uranium. They're thinking like we're probably gonna have to go get a bunch of shit, come back and invade Japan. You know, like
Yeah.
that's they're like the war's not ending soon. That's what they're figuring out. So, a few facts about this trip. The Indianapolis was not accompanied by guards or like helper ships. It obviously was on the way there. So there were like a bunch of other ships around it, making sure that like, you know, being extra careful about what was in the water and such. But they did not do that on the way back. They were not going in a zigzag pattern. So there's like a thing where you would kind of go back and forth in a zigzag as you were going to help like divert yourself from a submarine being able to see you, being able to find you. They were not doing that. They were going straight, but that wasn't like crazy. Like they were in a spot where they felt very safe. So they were just, it was up to the captain and they were going straight. It wasn't necessary. There was submarine activity in the area though, but they didn't know. So, I mean, I can't imagine how hard it was to communicate in 1945, you know, like to these ships anyway. Like you're getting very little information and like they just like they didn't know. They didn't get that information.
Yeah.
And it was also really, really hot outside. Like it's the South Pacific in July, so it's super humid, super hot, and there's a lot of people sleeping, like the men on the ship are sleeping naked on the deck. Because like what else are you gonna do?
This
It's
kind of
like
fun.
100 degrees. Yeah. So they're out there trying to catch the breeze. So it's nighttime, so a lot of dudes are outside. Our captain, who we're gonna talk about, is Captain Charles B. McVeigh III. So Captain McVeigh is on there. In total, there are 1,195 men on the USS Indianapolis. It's July 29th. It's about 11 p.m. and we'll go under the water to a Japanese submarine. So Japanese submarine I-58 pops up for a peek. So they have to like we've talked about how just insanely big the ocean is and how you can't find a nuclear submarine. Just you couldn't find one, and how they can just like disappear. And it's really wild. So they popped up, put out their periscope, and they like could not believe that they saw a ship. The Lieutenant Tanaka, he spots the ship. The USS Indianapolis is going 14 miles per hour. They don't know it's the Indy. They don't know what it is, but they know that it's like not theirs, you know?
Yeah.
So the commander, Mokishira Hashimoto, gets the news and it's like midnight and he's like, we're gonna do this. Like, we don't know what this is, but we're gonna shoot at it. He said that the Kaizen pilots were like, send us. And he was like, no, I think a torpedo would be better, but like who knows if that really happened. But isn't that funny? Um, I mean, like,
There's no way.
yeah, I know. I feel like what? Okay, did they say that? But I'm not sure. But whatever. And he shoots six torpedoes at the Indy, and two of them hit. Um, and so I want you to think about like I was listening to the book about this and I was just like this point I was like, whoa. This is before the in the water stuff, but it is midnight. So obviously like some people are awake because you have to always have someone working on these big boats, but most people are asleep. A lot of them, like I said, are asleep outside or they're asleep naked, which is like a thing because then they're not going to have any clothes in the upcoming days. And the ship gets hit and it sinks in 12 minutes. So as soon as it gets hit, it goes through like multi layers of like, you learned this watching Titanic, like the water can like goes into the different compartments. Like enough compartments were broken that the water could fill in the ship and it was going to sink. And instantly a ton of people die. Like wherever it hits, those people are dead. A lot of people are stuck in the ship. A lot of people will drown in the ship itself. Like as soon as it also gets hit, there's fire everywhere. You were asleep, you were just woken up. So things are on fire, including you, and then the lights go out, you
So
know?
scary.
And you're like, there's nothing. Like you're in the interior of a ship, there's no windows, like it's absolutely pitch black. It's hot anyway. You can smell oil, you can smell fire, you can hear screaming. Like you don't know which way is up. And about 300 people died in the ship in like the first 12 minutes.
So for the
So either,
record, it took the Titanic over 2 hours to sink. So this thing
oh
must
yeah,
have been
gosh,
like
that's very helpful.
super busted
Yeah,
up.
super. That's very helpful. Yeah, super buses. So people are just like trapped. Like there's terrible stories of people having like hearing banging, and that happened in Pearl Harbor too. Have you heard those stories where you're like they heard banging for days and they couldn't get to the guys because they were like
Yeah, it's
in different
terrible.
parts. Like it's terrible. So, but 300 people die in the first 12 minutes. That leaves. Oh, also people are like doing things like jumping out of the boat, obviously. Like the boat is on fire. They're jumping off of it, jumping off the ship into the sea. The sea is also then full of oil. Like it's full of the oil from the ship. It's full of debris. It's full of burning things. It's full of dying people. Some people jump into the propeller, whether either by accident or on purpose. Like in the movie Titanic, maybe in real life Titanic, I don't know. And some of them grab what they can, but they can. There's not like obviously not enough time. There's no time to get out. So some people have life jackets, and some people have rafts, and the rafts are not like when I picture a raft. If my ship sinks, I picture like those big orange ones, with like a floor. But these aren't like that. It's just like the outside part and then a net. So you're sitting in the net. But you're still when you're sitting, you're like waist deep in water.
Yeah, it's really uncomfortable.
Isn't that terrible?
Really
So they,
unpleasant.
they have some rafts, and they're eventually they'll like tie rafts together, tie people together, try to keep people afloat. Um, but most of them are just swimming. The first few hours is going to be people in the pitch black, in the um, huge rolling waves, like chaos everywhere, and you're just like holding your friends while they die. Like that's the first couple hours. Like tons of people are just dying in the water. Some of them are burned so badly, and they've just jumped into oil salt water.
Ugh,
You know? Oh my God.
how much
So
pain.
so much pain. So they must have thought, just like the Tom and Eileen, that people were coming for them. You know? We're in the
Yeah.
Navy. We're on a huge ship. We just did something really important. Like we just need to hang on and they're going to come and get us. The SOS guy who was supposed to put out that communication did, but nobody got it. Or if they did, they never said anything. No one ever got it. No one's really clear on that. Some people later say that they did get it and they told their superiors and they didn't do anything. Some guy said that he saw it sinking from like another pilot said he saw it sinking, but he thought it was like a pretend naval battle. And I'm like, why would,
It's so weird. That happened with Titanic too, where somebody was like, the
yeah,
California's like right next to, was like, they're probably just
just
celebrating. It's like
celebrating. Like,
the thing is like
gosh, guys,
sideways, inside out, upside down. Like,
go check. So, um, and eventually it's going to be 4 days that these guys are going to be in the water because the Navy didn't know that they were missing until they found them floating in the water. And
that's
we'll go
right.
back to like what happened, but like the ship didn't reach Leyte, Leyte. Leyte is a city they're supposed to get to on July 31st. No one did anything. They just like were like, oh, it's not here yet. Maybe it's a couple days late, and then they just had to like, go back and do the other stuff that they were doing, and like someone just like took it off the board, and no one did anything about it. Um, After that, they created a thing called the Movement Report System to prevent such disasters in the future. I'm like, what the fuck? Why wasn't
Well,
that always a thing? I understand that you have thousands of ships, but if you can't keep track of them, what are you doing?
well, that's why nobody panicked, was because nobody knew.
No, I know.
Well, because
But like,
there wasn't like a real system in place at that time.
no, I know, but why wasn't there?
I was not in charge.
I feel like my first thing would be like, how many ships do we have and where are they?
Let's see, we should have had you in charge.
I know. I feel like that's my number one question for when I become in charge of the Navy. How many ships do we have and where the fuck are they?
I can't
Great.
wait.
Um, so anyway, no one's coming for them. Not for no one's coming for them ever. They just happen to get found later. So these dudes are in the water. So we started with 1,195 of them. 300 or so die immediately in the boat. They're gone. Now we have 895. In the next 4 days, 579 of them are going to die in the ocean. So I watched a video of a survivor. His name is Edgar Harrell. He passed away a few years ago, but he was the last survivor. And when I say men, I think I've been saying men, I mean boys.
Yeah.
They're so young. Like the oldest person there is like 40. Like everyone, and so many of them are like, I just turned 17 and I'm finally get to be in the war. Like my grandpa was about this age because he was in the Marines, but only for like 6 months because then the war ended. Like he joined as soon as he could.
Wait, which war? Vietnam?
No, World War II.
Wait, your grandpa was in World War II?
Yeah, both my grandpas are in World War II.
Huh, yeah, I guess yeah, okay,
Yeah,
yeah. Timing
yeah,
wise. Okay, sorry.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, my one grandpa, he joined right then because the boys wanted to go, or whatever. So these boys are like 16, 17, 18. They're kids. So Edgar, he tells the story, is on YouTube. I encourage everyone to watch it. So like you know that I am someone who's like, when people say that they're talking to a higher power, I'm like, I don't believe you, or like that's something else going on. You know what I mean? But when Edgar Harrell says that he was talking to God and he heard God talk to him, I fucking believe him. It's so incredible watching this man like yell about it, and he's yelling and he's saying like he's an old man in this YouTube video that I'll show you. Um, but he goes, I heard them yelling, abandoned ship. I saw the torpedoes coming towards us. I yelled to God and I said, God, I'm not gonna die. I want to live. And God said, you're gonna make it. And so I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And like, it's really incredible watching this story, like watching him say it. But his story is he saw it go under. He saw the people hitting the propellers. He felt the sharks hitting him because there's water's full of sharks, which we'll talk about. Um, and the way that he survived is he ended up swimming with some guys who wanted to swim to the Philippines. And he's like, no, that's impossible. But he was like, let's just start moving. And then like he went with them and he found a crate of like rotten potatoes. And he like dug through the raw and ate the raw potato. And um he was so like overwhelmed and grateful, and that helped him and his friends survive. And like one of his friends was like wanted to just let go, and he like tied himself to him and was like, you can't do that, like whatever, and then talked about being saved. And anyway, it's really incredible. And um yeah, I'll share with you. You should watch it.
You can eat raw potatoes and not get sick.
I feel like I don't do it, but if you're in the middle of the ocean and you're starving, then yes.
Toxicity from solanine, digestibility. I mean, it's not good for you. You shouldn't do it, but yeah, I
Right.
guess in the situation, yeah, it's
Yeah,
not
you'd be like, oh,
recommended.
no thanks, I don't like potatoes. Yeah. So anyway, watch that. It's great. But so there's so many stories of the men who are in the water, right? So also there's several different groups led by different guys, and the waves are huge. Like the swells are huge, and they're in the middle of the ocean, so like they're getting pulled further and further apart. And eventually like they're like miles apart from each other when they're found, and like miles away from where it sank, even.
Yeah,
Because like the water, and even like that happens when you're on the beach. You like all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm way farther away from my umbrella than I thought I was.
yeah.
Like so they're really being pulled apart. A lot of the men are like horribly burned still. And then what happens while they're there for the next couple days is there's like obviously severe dehydration and exposure. So the it's hot during the day, it's cold at night. So you have like the extreme heat, the sun, the dehydration also like dehydrates your eyes. So a lot of them, like their eyes were so dry from the fire and the seawater and the sun that they were like they couldn't close their eyes,
Yeah,
you
this
know?
was the worst part.
Yeah. So they were just like their faces were just like sunburned and like chapped and
Oh
terrible.
God.
And
It's like hurting me to like think of. You're just
oh,
getting
you just
like
like
you can't close your eyes and you're having
no.
oil saltwater spot. It's like
Yeah. You're just getting
ugh.
brutalized by the sun. And like the longer you're in salt water, like your skin starts to fall off,
Just
you
go
know?
down, just go underwater and take a breath. Like
And a
at that
lot of
point.
people did. Like if you weren't tied to a raft and you didn't have your vest, and the vests were getting waterlogged after a couple days. Some dudes are just swimming, a lot of them just let go. Like
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? Especially because then it starts to be those sharks, those white tip sharks that we talked about. And they would start bumping people, and then they start because they're around because they smell the dead people, obviously.
Yeah.
So the sharks come and they start eating the dead bodies, which is great, but dead bodies don't like go away. Like you can't just like push a guy away and he'll like go, like they're kind of bobbing around.
Yeah, it's
So,
funny. It's funny how like the current will
mhm,
take you super far away from where you want to be,
yeah,
but won't take the things that you don't want near you, away from
Totally.
you.
It like keeps you all like bobbed together.
It's like anytime I'm in a
Um,
pool and there's like a dead bug, and I
ew.
like do the thing where you splash a little bit, like get it to go the other way, and then you look over in like a minute, and it's like right next to you.
Have you heard like someone say like how many dead bodies is it okay for you to be in a body of water for you to swim in it? Because like obviously you're like zero, but like the ocean is just full of dead bodies,
It's true.
you know,
It's true. But if you
if
find
you think
that, if
about
you,
it.
but you can
But you're not
apply
close to
that,
them.
yeah, you can apply that logic more so to your like apartment swimming pool.
Yeah. No, no, of course not. There's,
That's where
I
it
think
gets problematic.
that's where one is too many. Yeah.
Right.
Or like a body part, I think would even be too much for me. Um, but anyway, so the sharks start coming, right? And they start like bumping people's feet. They start like chomping at people. And once you start bleeding, they're people you gotta leave the group because you're bleeding, you know? So like some guys are together and then one guy gets bit by a shark and they like push him out of the group and like they've let the guy like go and swim away and just die because they can't help him and he's gonna attract more sharks, you know? And eventually people would just start getting like pulled down because they were like their whole body was an open wound anyway, you know?
Yeah.
And so anywhere between like 30 and 150 people were killed directly from sharks and the shark attacks. And just imagine like during the day, at night, the whole entire night you have to bob up and down in the water. You're in a ton of pain and like sharks are everywhere. Obviously, I bought Jaws and I watched
Of
most of
course.
it. I didn't finish watching it, um but you know what I mean? Like God, how scary.
That is Quint. I mean, the story we're telling is Quinn's story from
Yeah.
Jaws, obviously.
Yeah. Um, so there's sharks, there's dehydration, there's exposure, there's um, saltwater poisoning from drinking seawater. Because you get to a point where you're like, why is it's super unfair that I'm dying of dehydration and I'm covered in water, you know? So you think your body thinks like, oh, I'm gonna try this. So you drink it, and you're like, oh, you drink more of it, and then you just like die, you know, because you can't do that. Um, there is a little bit, people were kind of like going crazy, obviously mentally, like hallucinating, seeing things. They were hurting each other. They were like, there's stories, and I know they mentioned this last podcast of people like violently sexually assaulting each other and trying to eat each other and trying to drink each other's blood and just like going, like losing their minds in the sea, which like, I don't know, seems fair.
I
Like
mean,
everyone is you, no one's coming, you know?
yeah, I guess. I mean, you got to be in any of before passing judgment. You got to be in that situation to like know what it must
Exactly.
be
That's what I
like.
mean. That's what I mean. Like it's like the emotional mental strain is like crazy. And we'll see after this, like several of the survivors die by suicide because I don't because it's hard, you know? Like so many bad things happened. Um, but I did also want to see like, could you drink blood to survive? And I looked it up. I found a website called G Captain and it had a list of things to do if you're ever stuck on an island. And so regarding blood, should not drink urine, seawater, or bird blood specifically, but turtle blood is good, nutritious, and salt-free. So, you
That's
know,
got to be so gross.
no, totally. But I'm just saying you can drink turtle blood. Don't drink people blood, but you can drink turtle blood.
Do we know why you can't drink people blood?
I think it's the salt because they say specifically on this website that it says turtles are an easy catch and make for excellent meals. Their blood is good, nutritious, salt-free drink. Their flesh is tasty and filling. Their fat has many uses, and the castaway, this is for if you're on a desert island, will find turtle eggs a real treat. Mind the beak and the claws.
I've never had turtle, and I don't want to have
No.
turtle.
This is definitely not a plan, but I'm saying hopefully this will save someone's life for us.
Got it. Got it.
This information that I'm sharing right now.
Thank
I'm
you.
trying to save a life in the future. Um, So also obviously like with that, like people were having hallucinations and like severe psychological trauma. They were, people were like, I think the ship is here. The ship is just like 10 feet under the water. We just gotta go down and get it. And they would like swim around or like, guess what's going on over here? Like, I see a ship, I see an island, I'm gonna go, or I'm just gonna go. And they would just like start swimming and many of them drowned that way because they were just like, you know, losing their minds, like losing their grasp on reality. Some of them like once, like I said, once someone started to bleed, whether from a shark or from another kind of wound, they were attracting more sharks. So a lot of the groups made pacts to kill people who were bleeding and like so that they would like stop actively bleeding. And they did that, and so you would like have to kill your friends. And this is like all of this stuff is so traumatic. And a lot of them just gave up. Like I said, like you were saying, a lot of them just drowned because of exhaustion and they were like, fuck this absolute hell that we're in right now.
Meanwhile, they're like 18 years old.
Meanwhile, they're 80 years old. And then even the ones to survive, they have to go like live a whole life. Like, oh my God. Um, so it's 4 days of this, of just like people, and most of the guys out there are going to die. So 579 of them die in the water, 316 come out. So there's more dead people than alive people in this floating horror show. And then shit, it's just honestly just luck. So on 10:25 at 10:25 a.m. on August 2nd, Lieutenant Wilbur Gwynn was flying a PV-1 Ventura and saw them bobbing around. And like the bobbing is also insane. Like they're going up and down so high. So like a lot of them are even seasick on top of this, you know?
It
Like
couldn't get any worse.
because you're bobbing on top of this. And so he sees them and he's like, what the fuck is that? And like the chances are almost zero that anyone would have seen them. And this is like another thing that they say in last podcast at the end that is like, how many times in history did this happen where like we never found them, Like all the people that died in a ghost ship, they just like, probably took the boat for whatever reason and starved to death out in the sea and then, you know, they're in the ocean somewhere. Like
100%.
so like so many times like people were alive for a week, and then like they died. Like we don't know their story, so it's crazy that they were even found at all. Um, but when Lieutenant Gwynn goes like radios into command, he's like, I see people bobbing around, and they're like, who could that be? What are we missing? And like finally are like, oh, the Indianapolis didn't come to where it's supposed to be, and like realize what it was. But they were pulling the guys out of the water and asking them what ship they were from. They didn't know, which would make me so freaking mad. And I'd be like, you weren't looking for us?
Yeah. Well, they probably knew protocol.
Well, the protocol should have been like, they're not where they're supposed to be.
Well, yeah, but we just determined they didn't know when somebody wasn't where they were supposed to be.
I know, but like
They should
someone could have
have.
been, someone could have said something. Like, they didn't always do that. Like at some point, sometimes people were like, hey, where's the ship?
Right, right.
It wasn't like, it just wasn't a protocol. It's not like someone couldn't have been like, by the way, this didn't come in. Anyway, so the they call in other planes, and there's a plane flown by a pilot named Adrian Marks, and he has the best freaking pilot picture I've ever seen in my life. I can't wait to share it with everyone. He's like has like the big like leather jacket with like the big fur collar, and like he just looks great. But he comes in with his patrol plane, and he sees them, and he's like, "I'm gonna lose them if I don't have eyes on them," because it's so easy to lose people. And there are people who like saw them come over, and they're like, "I hope they find us." One pilot said that he saw someone swimming and like he never saw that person again. Like so some people died like while they're being rescued. Um, but the pilot Marks, he lands the plane in the water, even though he's not supposed to, because he's like, I gotta get them out of the water. So he like puts his plane down, has it like hit a wave to kind of like I don't know, make it not explode. And he lands the plane in the water, and he's never going to be able to fly it again. But he just like hoped for the best, landed, and now it's floating, and he's able to pick up 56 men out of the water. And he has so many people on the plane, they ends up bungee cording them to the wings while they're floating.
Is that real? I heard that too.
It's real. They don't fly away like that, but it is real that he had to put people out on the wings, like they did on the Hudson River. They had people on the wings, like the
Okay,
Scully
but
thing.
okay. The
They
the
didn't fly
way
that way.
some versions of this made it sound was that they took off with them on the
No.
wings.
That plane never took off again. No. It's actually going to be sunk that day. Like they're going to sink that plane is one of the last things they do in the recovery because they can't recover it.
Got it.
So yeah, but he does save a lot of folks that way. Soon, seven other boats come, and are able to take everybody back to Guam. One thing they did, which is really fucked up, is they sent a telegram to all of the families and said, um, like before they were able to telegram individual families, they put out like a press release that the Indianapolis had sunk and there were 100% casualties.
That's
But
not.
like
They should have.
that's that should have taken a beat and checked, you
Yeah, no
know?
kidding.
So obviously, like a lot of people were like, "Oh my God," and then people started to get like notes that people are okay. So then more people had hope, and like all these things. It was just like that was wrong. Like they should have been like, "Hold on," um, but they were reunited when they could be reunited. And then the guys just like some of them left the military, some of them stayed in the military. They do well, they don't anymore because they're all dead. They're all dead now. But they did a bunch of like reunions. They'd get together just to like have someone to talk about it with. Like a lot of them, of that generation in general don't talk about their feelings and like PTSD wasn't a thing. You called it shell shock and you'd were like get over it. But you're like, how do you sleep again after this?
How do you get in a pool again?
Yeah, you probably
How do
don't.
you take a bath again?
You probably barely shower. You probably like if yeah, the thought of any of these things like probably I mean, yeah, I feel like even any movement that felt like being on a boat, I feel like you'd freak out. So like I don't know how you survive this, um but they are going to go on. Like some of them, like I said, do die by suicide pretty early, but a lot of them, grow into old men. Um but then what happened after the Indianapolis sank and everyone was saved? Um or the 316 of them were saved. The captain, who I hadn't mentioned before, he survived. I don't feel like I have stories of Captain McVeigh in the water, but like he was in the
He
water too.
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
He
But
he was
did you?
part of one of the groups
Yeah.
because they weren't all together, right? Like I mean there were like
Right, that's what I was saying. It was over
cohorts
like
of them.
several miles.
And he
Yeah.
was
So
like part of one of those groups like
yeah,
kind of leading them in.
yeah. But he was like a decorated Navy guy. He'd been doing it for a very long time. And the Navy decided that it was his fault that this happened, and they took him to trial. He was charged with two things, failing to zigzag, that defensive maneuver we talked about, and failing to abandon ship in a timely manner. He had
That sunk
so
in 12 minutes.
exactly. There was so little time, and like so many people were like witnesses, and a lot of the men were like, what it wouldn't have mattered. Like he needed like 2 seconds to figure out what was going on. And then like the communication systems were all dead. So it's not like even when you're on the boat itself, you can hear me when I'm on the front of the boat, you're on the back of the boat. Like there's 1,000 people here. It's not like it was hard to even get that out. Like plenty of people didn't even hear the abandoned ship and jumped. Like
Yeah.
whatever. So he was on trial and in December 1945, so not like the same year. Did you know who they brought to DC to be in the part of the trial?
The Japanese submarine captain.
Yeah, Hashimoto. Isn't that insane? Like, it's insane to me because
Why
war
would
is
he
so
do it?
stu
Why would
war is
he
so stupid. It's so stupid. Like this man is like gonna kill 1,000 of us for no reason, and then a couple months later, we spend thousands of dollars to bring him over here to put one of our people on trial. You know,
also why
it's so
would he go?
arbitrary. Yeah,
Why would
yeah.
you go to an adversarial country like that you had a part in killing a lot of their
And it was like
soldiers?
Nuremberg trial time. Like I don't know, and then like he also like he they also like did a bunch of like really stuff that I think is so bizarre. They were like, well, I mean, obviously this is well, they were like, can he swear on a Bible that he's going to tell the truth? And they're like, well, he doesn't believe in the Bible. He's Shinto. And they were like, well, does he have any morals if he's Shinto? And he was like, yeah, I know not to lie under oath. I was just like, oh my God, we made all this up. You guys are so stupid. Like whatever. So Hashimoto was there and he testified that zigzagging would not have mattered. He would have been able to get him anyway. Other submarine captains on that were U.S. submarine captains said the same thing, that the failure to zigzag was not the reason it happened. It was just wrong place, wrong time,
Yeah.
you know? But he was court-martialed and then his sentence ended up being remitted and he retired in 1949 as a rear admiral. But Captain McVeigh is going to feel bad about this, like obviously forever. He wrote letters to every single family of the people that died on the ship, and he did it like as like a good gesture. But then the problem was they all got his return address, and he got hate mail for the rest of his life. One example is Merry Christmas. Our family's holiday would be a lot merrier if you hadn't killed my son.
Yeah.
you know?
It's
And
rough.
like it's rough. And he would meet with the survivors and like he did go to some of their like conventions because there were a couple of things where like a lot of these guys obviously didn't talk about it. And so there was one guy who was like, I remember my friend and I wonder how he's doing. And so they had to like find this guy because it was the 50s, and they like drove to his house and found him and they were like, listen, if you can find me, we can find more people. And they would have reunions and McVeigh went to those, but eventually the whole thing was just too much, and he died by suicide in 1968. He shot himself in on the porch of his house and laid there for like an hour, still alive, before someone found him, and then he died in the hospital, which is terrible.
Man, some people just have to go through the worst.
I
There's
know.
some people who like
Poor
live to be like
guy.
100 years old and then die pleasantly in their sleep, and then this guy went through
Yeah,
like these two
all
horrible
these
ordeals.
things. Yeah, and all just like the regular war stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, in 1996, a sixth grade student named Hunter Scott, just like a dude who now works for the Navy, because he's grown, but he read a book about it and he was like, "This is crap. Like this, it doesn't sound like it was the captain's problem at all. Like it wasn't his fault." So he, met with his congressman, like you were encouraged to do in the 90s, and it ended up having another hearing, and they invited more submarine captains, more people to come in and talk about like what had happened, and his name, McVeigh's name was fully cleared in October 2000. That took it away from his record and said he was exonerated for the loss of the Indianapolis. And Bill Clinton signed the resolution. Um, it also noted that, like, obviously the Indianapolis wasn't the only ship to sink during World War II. Zero other captains were to blame
Well,
for their own ship.
it's the fact that like he survived. If he'd been
No,
dead,
I know.
nobody would
Well,
care.
others survived as well.
No, no,
Others survived.
I know, but I'm saying like other ship captains, if they had like if they survived, they also probably would have been persecuted.
No, 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 they weren't. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay, never
Like
mind.
this wasn't the he was the only captain to be court-martialed for the loss of his ship due to enemy action. It happened a lot. It
Got
wasn't
it,
just this
got
one.
it.
Yeah, it was he wasn't the only one who lived. Like other people did, but he was the only one who was like they just like wanted to like do something with this tragedy. And I think probably this is definitely the one that had like the most trauma and the most story behind it, obviously, because like once they get out of there, you're like, oh my God, they were attacked by sharks for 4 days.
Yeah, yeah.
Other people were like found immediately. And I think a lot of it was maybe to cover up their own mistakes as well, being like, we should have known. Um, and then so that that happened. Other things that had happened since then. So his he's been cleared, and there was a nuclear submarine called the USS Indianapolis, and the captain of that submarine, when that submarine was retired in the 90s, he invited all of the survivors so that they could also watch that retire. Like they were like sister ships, which was very nice. Very nice to him to do that. And
I
then
wouldn't go on that.
no, like they were like old men by that time. They weren't like, going on it. They were just like there for the ceremony, you know, just to be like, okay, like it's a thing. Anyway, they just wanted to like say goodbye to it. Um, the Indianapolis has actually been found, and it was found in 2001 by like a Microsoft billionaire. Who was it?
Paul
Do you know this?
Allen?
Paul Allen, yeah. Yeah, he did the USS Indianapolis project and wanted to find it, and he found it. So they were able to like, take detailed pictures of it and all of that, and they know kind of what had happened to it, more from that as well. But they did find it in the end, um, which is kind of cool that they found it after all that time.
Wow, it's over 3 miles deep
Yeah,
on the side of an underwater mountain. Why is everything so scary?
underwater
Like,
is so freaking scary.
what is it even?
I know. That is
Oh my God,
so
I'm getting
deep
nervous just
and
like sitting
so
here.
dark and so scary. Um, I feel like I have something else that I wanted to tell you, but I can't remember what it is. But yeah, so um, that's it. The all of the survivors are gone now, but a lot of them stayed in touch, which is very nice. And oh, another thing is at um, one of the reunions, Hashimoto's family came after Hashimoto had died. Like his wife and his daughter and his grandkids came to a reunion as well, and they like the people were like, "You're a part of the story too," and like the kids played together, which is just like another war is stupid thing. Like, wow. Like, I can't believe it. Like, your grandparents were trying to actively kill each other, and now you're playing together. Why did we do all
Yeah,
that?
I probably if I was the family, I'd be like, I don't need to make this trip.
And but they did, and like everyone like felt better because of it, which I think is great. And like, but it just brings up the what was the point of all that? You know?
I think it was to stop Nazi Germany.
I know it was, but like,
I think that's the big
wow.
reason why we did
But
that.
but like to die like a couple months before the end of the war, like it just in all the people. What was the point? What was the point? I don't know. I don't know. Be nicer to each other, and
It's like dying of old age, like a month before we discover the secret to like
yeah,
forever life.
yeah. Like what a bummer. But poor families and all those poor boys. They're just all so young and like want to serve their country. Da 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 da. It's the war. It's almost over. Like or at least like we know by that time at least they knew like Germany was done, all that stuff, and yeah. I mean, when I look at the picture of the Indianapolis, I feel like I'm afraid to be on that boat in the middle of the ocean on it. Like regardless, like of the sinking, I'd be so scared. It seems so small in the middle of the ocean, you know? Doesn't even make
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Like
But
it
again,
just
like I
makes,
said, there's some things I think me and you are just not
no, I'm not doing that.
cut out for.
Obviously, I did not join the Navy, and I don't have any plans to. So cross that off my list
Unless
as
Russia
an old lady.
attacks.
Where are they going to put me? I'm not anywhere near any water. Um, yeah,
That's a good point.
yeah. But yes, that is it.
Very fun. Very fun. Very scary. Very fun though.
So scary.
Lots of interesting stories. And a good reminder, as you mentioned, war is stupid. So let's stop doing it.
Good. You know what? We should tell people that. Put
Listen
that
to
out there
us. We
in
should
the
define foreign
universe.
policy.
I
Um,
mean, we got some good ideas. Um, yeah, so that's my story. Watch Jaws again. It's great. I'm gonna finish it. Maybe I'll finish it tonight. It's so good. And be careful if you are in the ocean down there. Make sure you're the best person on the cruise as well, and on the Navy ship. That you're like, Captain, do you think you'd miss me the most if the ship sank? So that the captain would like know to find you if the ship is sinking
I mean, the only lesson I learned here is if you're ever in this situation, try to die as fast as possible, as soon as
as fast as
possible.
possible, as fast as possible. And yeah, because like the last podcast guy said, like I said, like God, how many people were like holding on and lived for like a week and a half, in the ocean and then died. Like, oh
Yeah,
my God,
yeah, not good.
the human spirit and all of the things. But yeah, cool. Thank you. I have one thing to share. My friend Abby from this weekend is an artist, and she like listens to shows and she was like and she does like a thing where she like draws pictures and writes words and like does like a little visualization of the thing she's listening to. So like when she's in a meeting, she'll do it, and when she's listening to a podcast, she do it. And she did it for our Amelia Earhart episode, and it's really cool. So I'm gonna show you, and I can't wait to show everybody.
Sweet. That's
And she says
awesome.
like fun quotes and stuff. So thank you, Abby, for doing that. And that's all I have, I think. Oh,
Thank
and oh my
you.
God, I have one more thing. Kiara, our longtime listener and friend, sent me the nicest message today. Just to check in and make sure that I was okay. And it was very kind and heartfelt, and thank you.
Sweet. Anything else, Taylor?
No, thank you, everyone. We have some, um, what do we have? Oh, I wanted to say that um, I'm starting to think about my Women's History Month stuff that I'm really excited for. So, looking forward to March for that. And then I have something fun that I've been listening to, like a historical fiction book, this week. And I was listening to it in the car, and it's really good. So like it gives me a good like base for my topic next week. So I'm excited. So if you have any cool things you want to hear about or learn about or feedback or anything, please let us know. We're doomed to fail pod at gmail.com and doomed to fail pod on all the socials.
Sweet. Thanks, Taylor. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thank
day.
you.